Blog Talk Radio.
Hello. Tonight we are having an episode honoring the life of Dick Gregory. We will also have a continuing discussion about the Charlottesville situation and how that impacted everyday thinking and American attitudes towards racism, and what really is the underbelly of racial conflict in America. Are there lurking white supremacists in more than just the South? I want to focus on Dick Gregory, though, because not only was he a comedian, he was an intimate writer who talked about his own struggle in Chicago and how he pulled himself up from the bootstraps and became an overcomer. He was friends with Prince. He recently talked in the last 5 years about chemtrails and how they affected people. He was an advocate for the civil rights movement. He helped Father Groppe on many of the marches walk over the 16th Street Viaduct. I posted a few pictures on our radio show tonight, and I'm going to read an excerpt from one of his speeches. He was a radical, okay? He did not back down. He was not afraid. He probably wasn't as notorious as Muhammad Ali, but he was close. This is a speech from Marquette University. It was at the Brooks Memorial Union during the time that the Milwaukee 14 were being jailed for burning draft cards. He also organized a march to rally outside their jail cell window. As I said, he was instrumental helping Father Groppe organize marches and fight the Polish people who were hurting black people as they walked by in marches. I am grateful that the Student Senate has invited me here this evening. I understand there are new restrictions in the student union due to an anti-war movement and the student support of certain draft card burners. We are in critical times, and you, my friends, are at the epicenter. Milwaukee is the crossroads for racial tensions, the anti-war sentiment, and the clash between generational values of what is respectful versus tolerant. I am here to clue you in that America is the most corrupt, insane, filthy nation on earth, and your job is to change our course. We have the old fools in Washington and the new niggas who are the police running amok around all the time. They allow white citizens to throw bottles and rocks at black Milwaukee, often the self-identified Polish people who were once discriminated against in the same city by the bourgeoisie. To be poor is an awful thing in the eyes of the elite. To be black is worse. To be for war means you are supporting a machine intent to kill and oppress even more people around the world. Maybe the Poles will wake up someday like we did and cease being the nigga. In the scope of things, I don't advocate destroying the capitalistic system, but we better beat it down till it is under the United States constitutional system, not on top of it. We have to start somewhere, even if it is penetrating the system. I guess he was talking about someone who interrupted his lecture. I guess he couldn't wait till the end of the lecture, and I want to also express my sympathy for demonstrators who were active in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. Mayor Daley is a stinky and scroungy politician. We also have to watch out for George C. Wallace, who's courting black police across the country and giving false support. He's making promises he won't be able to keep, and he's not to be trusted. Okay, that was an excerpt from the speech of Dick Gregory at Marquette Student Union in the Brooks Memorial Union in October of 1968. Tim Welsing is on the line, and Ben from Washington State. Hello, guys. How's it going tonight?
Pretty good.
Hey,
yourself?
how you doing, Jane?
Hi, Tim. Thanks for calling in. Ben, Tim is a friend of mine who used to call in on the radio show when I lived in L.A., and I invited him to be on the show tonight. And his parents, his mother is German and his dad was from Ghana, and they were one of the first interracial couples in America. And, the only reason I'm saying that is because I just talked about Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which was a site, his mother was from Wisconsin. It was a site for sore eyes in the 60s. It was the epicenter. I'll just read one more excerpt from the Dick Gregory speech. He said that Milwaukee is at the crossroads for racial tensions, the anti-war sentiment, and the clash between generational values of what is respectful versus tolerant. And then he went on to say that the Polish people who were persecuting the blacks during the Father Grappi marches, which was a famous priest in Milwaukee, the Poles used to be attacked by other racial clusters, and now they were attacking blacks in that city. But the topic tonight is Charlottesville and the continuing dialogue on the mainstream media about where this is playing out. And supposedly there was some big rally in Boston this weekend between opposing groups. And also Dick Gregory died yesterday, and so did Jerry Lewis, so that's why I was quoting Dick Gregory just now. So does anybody want to add
two great comedians.
Yeah, Dick Gregory, right? And Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, love them both.
I know Ben, my friend Ben, Tim, who's been on the air with us for at least 10 months. You didn't get a chance to say anything last week, Ben. Did you want to start out with maybe an introduction to how you witnessed the Charlottesville events and how it impacted you?
Sure. It didn't impact me because I think the media had their heyday with the Nazi flags. I think there's a lot more power in the media than there actually was power on the ground. I think if there was a conservative movement there, it got definitely destroyed by the splinter groups that were there, especially with the death that happened, which nobody knows if that was a planned thing or not.
I don't think it was, because that guy from Ohio was off the rails.
Right.
Do you really think he pre-planned that?
No, I don't know what to think about it, but I've heard a lot of people from both sides of the aisle say that if there's a mob of protesters in the street beating on my car, the unanimous decision that I've heard from many people is that they would punch it and get out of there. They're not going to be dragged out of their vehicle. This is coming from both sides of the argument. If this happens and they're just trying to get home or just trying to get to work, they're not going to put up with people protesting in the street, beating their car to death. But this guy, it sounds like he came a long ways to participate. So it's hard to say what actually happened. I know that if there was anything to that movement,
I guess we really don't know with somebody who is that distorted, if he got carried in the moment or if he had, maybe he did pre-plan it, but I don't think he pre-planned it with other people. Tim, do you have access to headline news at your sister's, or did you hear what happened last weekend?
Oh yeah, I've heard about it. I'm following a lot of this stuff in the news online and all that. So
yeah, well,
you're talking about Charlottesville, right?
It's not so much what people bluntly say on television, but I listened to even a lot of black advocates this week on CNN, and they. Some of them are poignant, but in fact, sometimes they even cross each other's viewpoints. But one thing I don't like is the continual rhetoric. Like I heard this one lady this morning that, well, that white people are also supporting the anti-racist, anti-Confederate groups, but are we really solving equity problems in education and job formation? I don't know. It just seems like it turns into the same circle of rhetoric, like how can we improve our country? Where are we failing? How are we going to make 10 steps forward without taking 3 steps back? Now that Betsy DeVos character, who is in the education department now, doesn't seem to be on the side of people who are progressive in the way they think education should be run. So just because there's an incident like this doesn't mean that these types of problems are going to be solved on a wholesale level.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people turned to Obama when he was elected. A lot of the activism you saw, coming out of the 60s, people thought that now we have someone within government that can carry the fight forward and help us to make progress. And I think that sentiment still exists, that, we can find someone on the left who can champion these causes and take us down and solve these problems in a holistic way,
Well, I think Obama had a educational leader who was actually going to try to keep schools open like 12 hours a day. Arnie Duncan, I think his name was. But do you think Obama succeeded in reaching out to the minority belief system?
I think he was trying to unite us as Americans, regardless of our ethnicity, and I think that's probably inevitably the way it should go and probably will go, so that a lot of this rhetoric and the racial politics we've seen for decades will become irrelevant, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm not, Ben, I'm going to have you, somebody called in from the 404. Ben, I have a question to field you before I bring in the 404 caller. Ben, do you think, how much % blame do you put on Donald Trump for the Charlottesville mess? And is it just the removal of statues that's causing this, Ben?
5%, I would say, goes to Donald Trump.
Can you explain?
I wouldn't completely remove him from the situation, but I can't make a judgment on how people perceived what he said, because it can be explained either direction. If whatever your bias is, it can be explained either way. Whether he used the right language or not is always the question with Donald Trump. But
the problem with Donald Trump is he has no filter. So even if he's making an honest observation, he doesn't have the capability of calculating if his thoughts are going to have an impact of good or bad. I'm not trying to say he should lie or filter it in a way that's going to just only impact the people he wants to, but you have to take into consideration, as Heather Hayer's mother said, that you're not going to describe my daughter as in the same vein as you would a person who drives their car through the street trying to injure 20 people. So why don't you take a pause for a second while I find out who this caller is? It could be Les. Good evening. This is Jane. Who am I speaking with?
Yeah, this is Naj.
Hi, Naj. What area code are you calling? I mean, where's the 404?
Oh, this is in Atlanta.
Oh, awesome. Well, we have 2 regular co-hosts on the line and 1 guest from Southern California. And we were discussing Dick Gregory's life earlier because he made a big impact on my life. But what would you like to mention tonight?
I would like to talk about what you guys were just discussing. That, and along with at least a few kind words for the great Dick Gregory. Sad to hear him pass.
Right, sure. He impacted my life through the Milwaukee marches in the late 60s. He was in alliance with Father Grappi, who tried to bridge the gap of housing, fair housing, because there was a lot of segregation in Milwaukee and people who wouldn't rent to blacks. But why don't you comment on what we were just discussing?
No problem.
Okay,
Hello?
what do you want to say?
Oh, you guys ready?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're ready because we pretty much just started 10 minutes ago. So we're open to anyone calling in.
Oh, I got you. No, what the last gentleman said, you can't really calculate a percentage of how much you blame on Trump as far as that happening. How he handled it afterwards, yeah, you blame that on him. He handled it badly. Like you said, he speaks his mind and he speaks honestly. The problem is, does he speak it in an intelligent way? Did he really weigh everything before he said it? Did he really think about it and say, well, maybe I can come up with a better way of getting this across? Because I think everything was muddled, and it ended up sounding like tacit agreement, and I think it emboldened a lot of people, and that's why we saw more events coming up in the next few weeks for those groups. But Trump didn't create these people. These people were already here before Trump even thought about running for president. So when people try to use Trump as a way of avoiding the issue of, look, this is a new day and age. People can be radicalized online in many different functions. And if you get a group of young people who don't have any intellectual foundation, they can get in an echo chamber, and before you know it, you almost got a full-blown Nazi, or you got a Muslim radical, or, whatever, because that's what happens when people get in echo chambers and they don't have anything to combat the information that they're taking in. Before you know it, everything starts to make sense to them and sound good to them. So we got a huge portion of people now who believe in things that we thought we crushed in the 1930s, as far as, some
Yeah,
some of
plus
this,
the Internet is a vehicle in which people can find themselves on radical websites, and if they're not educated, they can't discern what the truth versus fiction is.
Yeah. That's the danger of the age of information. But the one other
difference between. Just real
Go
quick.
ahead, man.
That's the difference between education and indoctrination. That's to be able to know the difference between right and wrong, as far as information goes. That's the difference, and you made a good point there, Nosh.
No, I agree with you. Huge difference between those two words, because somebody who doesn't have critical thinking skills and ability to discern, they won't be able to tell a hustler from or a con man from an actual historian. And they're taking YouTube videos with scary music in and thinking that's a historical reference. That's also a sad state of our education system right now, kind of a indicator. That flat Earth theory that people are actually believing in now. You see what I mean? Like we've got to hunker some things down in education because we've got some issues. But the other thing, I think we really got to come to a place to where either people's grievances are valid or we've been inventing everything from day one. Like either black people have legit grievances about how society is structured and how we're treated in the society, or we've been lying for all of these years. I think we do a bad job when we just dismiss these things that actually affect black people, because here's the reality. Every country, your greatest resource is what? Your human being. And if you don't get people to act up to the fullest capacity of what they can be, then you've wasted a huge swath of people in your country. And in the age of globalism, where you're competing with countries across the world, China and India, to be exact, as far as the two major ones we're going to be competing with, if you're not using the best of your resources, how do we really expect to win? Because they won't have the same type of internal infighting and the same type of issues to where we're not getting the best of the best of the best. So,
can I comment on that a second? I was just in Milwaukee this weekend. I spent 2 nights at a draft card burner's house from the 60s who spent a year in state prison. He was personal friends with Father Grappi, and he said the racial segregation and the lack of job opportunities in Milwaukee is worse now than it was in '68. And they've also cordoned off their public transportation. So the north side of Milwaukee, where most of the poor blacks live, don't have access to light rail like Minneapolis does. And the city of Milwaukee refuses to build modern-day transportation systems like other progressive cities do, like Minneapolis. And by the way, Don from the NAACP is on the line. But go ahead, Nash.
Okay.
Nash, and finish your comment.
Great point about Milwaukee. There have been many books written about the history of Milwaukee and just how it is. But I would extend this and say, look, you got the same thing going on in rural areas right now. You got the same thing going on where you see an opioid epidemic. Why? Because we lost the factories that people used to be able to, get a job at. If you didn't have the highest education, you could still have a family, buy a house and a car and all of that through the sweat of your labor. Now, you lose that kind of production and that ability and opportunity, then what do you have? Then you have drug trade starting to thrive, you have mass unemployment, and we'll have all the issues that we have throughout rural America. And that's the white side of town. So, these issues that affect black people, they also affect white people. And we really got to get some idea about class, race, sexism, and everything else in this country that just needs to be addressed. Not because we like to argue with each other, but because if we fix these things, we can put ourselves in much, much better position as opposed to constantly running behind problems and, curing symptoms.
That's kind of what I was saying earlier on the show, that are we going to talk about it or are we going to do something? These talk shows get on my nerves. Don, why don't you introduce yourself to the group? And Tim and Ben also want time to say things. Don, introduce yourself.
Hello, folks. I'm hi from the middle of the, Las Vegas Strip. The Flamingo, I'll crash into it if I say much more. Brother man who's on there, thank you for saying something, because they always marginalize me or Jane cuts me
I
off.
don't.
Oh, shut up, Jane. They cut me
You're
off.
at an NAACP dinner, aren't you?
No, this is NARA for Labor, Alliance for Retired Americans. I'm a member of and I, by the way, NARA is Alliance for Retired Americans. And I am the history of Milwaukee, so that's just a fact.
His mother was the first female cop in Milwaukee. The first black female cop. Okay, Don, say more. Talk about what you do.
And I also integrated one of my middle schools and my high school there in Milwaukee. But in terms of what I do, I'm everything. I'm a community liaison. I keep some of the communities in northern Nevada together. An ACP vice president, second vice president, and then I've got my own presidency of NAACP chapters and board members of a lot of different things. I'm a citizen lobbyist, so I take care of a lot of the legislation that right now, the social stuff that goes on. That we've also got the first Latina senator and female senator in history of the country, and that's because I was able to bring them in. So, the thing is that when I started talking about all this, this is one of the first times Jane said, "Tell us more," in about 4 months. Come on, Jane. How's everybody else doing? Ben, Albert?
Oh, I'm good. How you doing?
All right, good.
Tim.
Good.
Tim Welsing.
Tim Welsing.
What's your name?
You?
Don?
I'm Don.
Oh, I'm in L.A.
You're in L.A.?
Down here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's
West Side.
What part?
On West Side, L.A. West Side.
West Side.
Oh, what part of the West Side? Down by Marina del Rey.
Okay. So,
on the coast, kind of.
All right. Yeah, I used to live on Speedway in Washington. So, that's why I had to move to Reno, because L.A. they were kicking me out. Another state that was kicking me out. But
wow.
My wife went to Westchester High, so that was her.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's
school.
close. Yeah, that's very close. Westchester is very close to where I'm at. So
yeah. And then,
Jane,
yeah, Tim.
Go ahead.
Who was the
I was going to say I
was speaking.
Nash from Atlanta, and Don, my friend
Nash.
Tim is on the line from Marina del Rey.
Right. Okay.
And Ben is on the line from Washington.
Tim? Okay.
Okay.
I already know.
Don, give everybody a chance to speak.
Yes, shush up. Anyway, Tim, what were you going to say? You're going to say something.
Well, I have to get off the line in a moment, but I just wanted to mention, because of, Dick Gregory and Jerry Lewis is, it's interesting because they're kind of two different type of people who use their success in different ways. But Jerry Lewis, of course, used his success. He did the MDA, and Dick Gregory, he became involved in an activist because the community was reaching out to him, and he used comedy as a way to get across a message, and I think, any good cultural offering will have some kind of message that speaks to our times, and I'm just hoping we can build an independent medium where people can express themselves. I know that's supposed to be the internet, but I find the corporations, they just tend to suck the air out of the room. Anybody who has any kind of success is just they swarm them, and look at American Spirit cigarettes. Supposed to be all progressive and natural, and they were bought out by R.J. Reynolds for $5 billion. Everybody's got a price. It's kind of the money that I think is compromising the integrity of people's ability to have a common forum where they can express themselves. I mean, thank God for shows like Yours, Jane, or there are a lot of good things online, but I think that needs to be built up more because, like the gentleman was saying, that if we can communicate.
And by the way, Don's on hold until he stops laughing.
If we can communicate, then we'll understand that, like Naj was saying, that there are things behind what everybody's saying. We're all human, right? Hopefully everybody can get to the point where
Both Jerry Lewis and Dick Gregory use their success in a positive way. Dick Gregory was pretty radical and straightforward. Three of you missed the speech I repeated that he gave, but he also, him and Prince, the one who died last year, my homeboy from Minneapolis, they were working on a research about chemtrails and how the U.S. government submits chemical warfare through us through chemtrails. So I'm going to let Don back in now, but Tim, I'm sorry you have to go, but I'm sure Ben appreciated some of your comments. I'll call you Monday, Tim, because I have a few things to tell you.
Okay. Hey, nice talking to everybody. Thank you for your input as well. I got a lot out of it. Y'all have a good night now.
All right, thanks, Tim. I'll call you tomorrow. Thanks. Tim, Don, you're off mute.
Tim. Yeah, Tim.
You're off mute, Gallimore.
No, I hope he's not.
Ben, why don't you say something quick before you don't get a chance again?
I wanted to know where you got Tim from, because that was one of the smartest things I've ever heard in my entire life that he just went through. The diatribe.
Okay, Tim, I've known 10 years. We used to be fundraisers for Telefund. We raised money for the ACLU, Obama, Clinton, 2 animal organizations, HRC, and a couple others. We got paid to do it. And he has a bachelor's in physics, and he's a genius. Okay, Ben, did you want to make a comment?
Sorry, no. I had it on mute. I was talking. Sorry.
Fell asleep.
I thought finally somebody said something to stand up for the other side, and then you missed it.
No, I heard every bit. You didn't hear me.
Okay, John, I thought you were making fun of Tim when he brought up Jerry Lewis. That's why I muted you.
I was.
Well, don't make fun of Jerry Lewis, okay?
Jerry Lewis was one of the biggest. He was one of the big boys in the mob, and then Dick Gregory was one of the big boys back in the day with CORE. They couldn't be two more different people with comedy for that circle.
I was just reading about CORE tonight because my friend was down in Mississippi where those 3 blacks were killed, and Philadelphia, Mississippi. And he brought 4 kids down there to protest from Minnesota, and they were talking about the 3 people who died down there.
Right.
I know James Carney was one of them.
But
we haven't heard from Nash in a while. Nash, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, just real quick. I mean, when you're talking about Dick Gregory, the thing that kind of gets missed is he didn't have to do it. He had this career that was just starting. He could have been the media darling and a wealthy man as long as he ignored everything that was going on around him. He risked all of that to become a humanitarian and civil rights activist. Just what he did in Greenburg, Mississippi alone, where they shut off access to the food there, and he and some other people ended up flying that food in. The work he did in Ethiopia, the runs, for hunger, all these different confrontations that this dude had. And he's one of those people where it's like Forrest Gump almost, to where you read the other stuff about history and somehow he pops in there. He's in the autobiography of Malcolm X. He's in, all these just different times. And you'll start to see it with the pictures, him and Bob Marley doing that fundraiser. They started off with a contentious relationship. Somehow they repaired it. But, just all the different places that you see.
You know what it reminds me of?
The amount of times he put his life on the line.
You know that football quarterback who didn't get drafted this year because he kneeled down during one of the
Kaepernick.
He didn't get drafted, and he's kind of out in the cold just because NFL owners don't want to get involved in controversy. But it's not like
you think that's the reason? He lost 11 out of 12 games after he did that also.
Well, he was on the San Francisco 49ers who were rebuilding, so that team was horrible. So he was leaving that team regardless. It wasn't about wins and losses. It was about you hit the American ethic that they don't like, meaning to force America to look in the mirror about who she actually is. Rather than do that, they rather demonize the person actually with the megaphone. This goes back to the Iceman coming. When America actually looks in the mirror and realizes who it is, he's more likely to go fascist than it is democratic. So this man called out, basically, do you live up to the Constitution?
The only thing I was going to say, Ben, is that in the 60s, people literally burned draft cards. They raided draft board offices. All this guy did is kneel. I mean, it's not like he's started a fire somewhere. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
right, but
compared to the old days, he was pretty tame.
The argument that he's making is that he is a victim, he's disenfranchised. And how many people are going to buy that coming from him, being the 1% graduating from the 1% college, getting a job that makes him in the top 10th of 1% in the United States, which already you're in the best place possible for any kind of life. And he's
that
claiming victimhood.
His argument was against police brutality. And he actually risked that career that you're bragging about, that he's talking about. He risked that career in taking this stand. He knew that when he did it, and now he saw the owners basically blackball him. And honestly, this is a racial issue and a labor issue, because you see collusion between a multi-billion-dollar, sports company in saying, okay, he may be better than a couple of people in the league, but he's not playing because we don't like what he did. So anybody who's a normal person should understand labor negotiations and say, wait a minute, this goes beyond just a normal argument about whether the police are brutal or not. This goes to, we can shut you down because we don't like what you have to say, even though you're better than the majority of guys playing. 32 teams, 3 quarterbacks for each team. He's better than at least 70% of them. And he's not playing.
I don't know the whole backstory. I just heard the headlines on NPR.
Yeah, I know it. So
the basketball players weren't punished for it, but Kaepernick was.
It's attacking the country that sponsors you. Basically, you signed an agreement that says, yes, you'll play this game, and you know full well that there's an American flag on just about everything that there is associated with football. And the halftime show is usually a big, giant American flag, some fireworks, and to be the one that decides to take a stand against that flag is to put yourself in unnecessary employment danger.
He did take a big risk.
Hold on, because I do sports. I actually do sports radio, so I know this topic. Now, notice he had to use 2 fake arguments to try to downgrade Kaepernick. Now he was against the flag. No, it's against police brutality. He started off sitting down, and a Navy SEAL named Nate Boyer said, if you would take a knee, that would show respect for the troops. We'd appreciate if you take a knee instead of sitting down. So he started taking the knee. That's why he had that action. And again, this is not a challenge to the flag or anything else. This is about police brutality. But you have an ownership group in the NFL. You can look up Howard Bryant, sports writer, who listed all of their campaign contributions, and you'll see how they vote and how they actually think, and you'll realize that they would take this as they don't like locker room lawyers. They don't like people who think for themselves in football, which is why they're blacklisting them. And if you look at the New York Jets or some of these other teams who don't have a quarterback right now, and Colin is clearly out there and clearly could play, it lets you know this is way beyond what we normally think. And those flyovers and that big flag you just talked about, the NFL was charging the military to actually do those displays at games. This got leaked a couple of years ago. The NFL was embarrassed, and now they don't charge the U.S. Army for showing up to the games. So the hypocrisy is everywhere.
Okay.
How about, can I bring up go ahead, Ben.
Well, it's still coming from somebody who leads a very privileged life. He was, regardless of his younger childhood and what he experienced.
You know, Colin Kaepernick was raised by a white family. He was adopted by a white family. Yeah, so I mean,
and that doesn't make any difference to my argument.
Somebody who has a lot to risk. You keep bringing up, somebody who has a good job. Yeah, the fact that he would put that on the line means there's some morals here we're dealing with. There's somebody who's willing to stand for something at the risk of his own career. That's commendable to me in any way. So I don't get how that becomes some kind of detriment that he had a good ass job and was willing to risk it.
Well, I guess internally we don't know how he measured his values, but I think what Ben is trying to say is that
you can go to his website.
He was the cream of the crop, and Ben, according to you, I'm thinking that you thought he blew it.
I do. I think it was kind of if you're going to go play your heart out for the game and you accept all the money that the people pay you to do so, you sign the contract that says who you are, what you're going to do for this company, that the company demands this of you. You sign it. And then to make it into a political thing, I think he would have done better doing a CNN interview instead of grandstanding his argument, making fans turn away from the 49ers in general. I know a lot of people that hate the 49ers now, and I could care less what they think of the 49ers. But I think his argument's hard for me to follow because it seems like
his argument
spoiled.
is he's against the killing of black people by police officers who don't go to jail afterwards. What is hard to understand?
Yeah, after the media used those circumstances to create revenue, he took one side of the argument.
Oh, there's another side.
You guys, Ben's in charge of the show for a few minutes because I have to step out, but I'll still be on the line. But I wanted to mention, can you guys interlope Tim Teebow into this conversation? Because all he was a zealot Christian, and he got dissed by the NFL too.
Well, they actually love Tim Teebow. They made the mistake of not letting Teebow play tight end or H-back or one of the other positions to where he could have stayed in the league. His agent convinced him to stay at quarterback, and he wasn't really going to be a starting quarterback anywhere in the NFL. But those same agents got him. They got him in the MLB now, so he might be playing in the major leagues in the next couple of years before you know it.
I did hear about his baseball career, and he got either a home run or something like that the very first game he played.
Yeah, the interesting thing, though, is when he took a knee, nobody minded. Matter of fact, everybody copied it and said, oh, that's great. They made T-shirts and slogans and everything else. He took a knee. Oh, it's beautiful. But when you advocate for black folks, it becomes a problem. But, yeah, Tim Teebow, good, solid dude, solid citizen, man, and I think he got some bad advice in trying to stay at quarterback instead of switching. Because I think he could have played for years at tight end or H-back. Yeah,
he was one of, that Latino guy from the Northeast that got convicted for murder? He was one. Yeah, he was one
Henderson?
of his teammates. Yeah,
Aaron
he was one of
Hernandez.
his teammates in college.
Oh, yeah.
Teebow and Hernandez were teammates in college.
Oh, it got so bad down there. The coach left immediately after Teebow left because they had so much going on. Police blotter stuff, fights, rape charges, all kinds of stuff at the University of Florida during that period. Like it's a really bad time there. Urban Meyer left as soon as he could, and
that's
now
a
he's
bummer,
back at Ohio State.
Right?
Yeah.
Don, are you still on the line?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Just so you guys know, I'll be out in the community for about 20 minutes. So if your line drops, I can't pull you back in. So, anyways, I want to segue back into Dick Gregory for one more second. In the same vein as Muhammad Ali, as he got older, he even became more fearless with the media or how he was pigeonholed by people, because he said whatever the hell he wanted. Now, in some cases, if you watch his YouTube videos, he's a little bit over the mark, but he never really backed down from his core values, and I guess that's why I kind of admire him.
Well,
I admire him a lot.
The one thing about Dick Gregory was that he also told the black folks, the black community, what they needed to do to get over the hump, so to speak, to deal with the white community and make sure that we kept our identity.
Yeah, in the speech that I read, he said he was pretty much calling out the Polish people who were persecuting the blacks and saying one time you were in this position where the bourgeoisie was suppressing you, and now you're trying to use your Polish pride as a force for violence versus a reminder of the past. And he also mentioned what black people should do in that speech, too. That if you can't back down, you have to assert yourself, otherwise you're not going to get what you want. But he didn't mean it in a violent way. He just meant it as a tool to recognize.
Yeah, that's one of the deepest things about America.
And it wasn't a black-white thing either, because my friends, the Milwaukee 14-7, were white priests. He formed a rally to come and help them when they were in jail for burning the draft cards. So he was an advocate on many fronts. It wasn't just for the civil rights.
Well, that's why I said humanitarian first, then civil rights. But just real quick, that Polish thing you just talked about, that's one of the deepest things in America most people miss. Whiteness is an invented thing. Like, there's nothing scientific about it. There's really no racial categories. These are things that were invented in order to separate or decide you're going to dominate someone. And in America, as people came over here, everybody started off on the bottom. And the crazy thing was people started getting acceptance into whiteness. So the Polish community, the Irish community, the Italian community, they went through these periods to where, they were on the outs and dealt with everything else, the things black folks were talking about. And then at a certain point, they got whiteness. You know what I mean? And everything changed, which is a crazy concept when we really think about what race is and what we consider it, because it's not science. Social.
I would like to add something, because my mother grew up in a mining town in northern Minnesota where the Italians were called Wops, the Germans were called Krauts, the Hungarians and stuff were called like Bohunks. But the fact of the matter is that it depends where you grew up, because I grew up in the Minneapolis area. Even though I was born in 1960, we didn't marginalize people of other races. I grew up in an accepting area. It wasn't like Milwaukee. Minnesota's very progressive, and there was a lot of interracial marriage even in the 70s. So it kind of depends where you grew up.
Yeah, but that don't save Philando Castile's life. You see what I mean?
That was just one stupid cop. One stupid Latino cop named Geronimo Yanez.
That's what all the incidents become after a while. But, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You know what, Nash? In that case of Philando Castile, it was just one stupid cop who was inexperienced and scared of Philando just because he mentioned he had a gun. I don't blame the St. Anthony Police Department.
Through the legal system, was it just one stupid cop? Or are we talking about?
No, because the jury should have
convicted.
The jury should have convicted Yanez. But did you know Philando's mother got a multi-million-dollar settlement? Not that it makes it any better, but she did.
Well, the state of Illinois paid out over $400 million since the 90s. So, I mean, yeah, that's typical. That's what happens.
For Laquan McDonald or somebody else?
Oh, no, just over the years, all the cases stacked together. Because at a certain point, we're talking about taxpayers weighing that burden and not being upset about paying for these settlements because tacitly they agree. And that's the difficulty of talking about this stuff in America, because you can't get most people to actually say that. But in reality, that's why we get the judgments we get, and that's why things are the way they are.
True.
And that's why that man put his career on the line out there in football, because he saw some wrong and decided to take a chance on it. But we're getting away from Dick Gregory.
I do want to talk about one slant, though. I'm going to have Ben go next because I don't want to disclude him. I want to talk about one slant I heard on NPR, that one of Philando Castile's best friends, who said that he just wishes he could sit on the porch with Philando and play chess, that Philando loved, but instead he decided to become a spokesman and a civil rights advocate since his death, and now he spends all his time in the community giving speeches and working for charities. He worked at the school with Philando, the elementary school, and he said his life has completely changed, and he's not even the type of person to go out and speak in public. I am sad that tragedy happened in Minnesota. I'm just glad it wasn't something like, I don't know, it's just the face of it was so ugly. But in the same vein, it was proven that Michael Brown did not steal cigarillos either. He left them there overnight as an exchange and a barter. And his case was misrepresented too. Okay, well, Ben, do you have something to say?
But what about Green in Carolina when he got shot in the back and the cop planted the gun? That was ugly.
Yeah.
That was another case that was so ridiculous. His name was, I think his last name was Scott. His last name was Scott. He was a former serviceman.
You're right. Walter Scott. But the cop actually did go to jail for that. So that's one of the rare cases to where it's like, okay, we saw all this happen, and we did actually see people act in a way that made sense. So he's still serving time.
Nash, the other thing about the Minneapolis case, the Castile case, is Mark Dayton, the governor, was instrumental in getting Geronimo Yanez charged for second-degree murder. So at least they tried to convict him. They didn't just go through some kind of police overture and then let him off. But the day that he was found innocent, he was canned from the police force anyway.
Yeah, we'll see. The woman in Texas who shot Terrence Crutcher, she just got another job in the police force. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to the temperament of the country about 2 weeks ago. Did Heather Heyer die a week ago or 2 weeks ago? I think it was only a week ago in 2 days. So
yep.
Let's talk about the significance, Ben, you too. Let's say it was a black woman who died versus a white woman who stood for her beliefs. How do you think the media would have spun that one out?
Probably just more intensity. I think that the way it happened, the way the media showed you pictures of Nazi signs and showed you the car plowing through people.
Don, let him finish his statement.
It's obvious that it wasn't a premeditated murder. He didn't know who was going to die. He just plowed into a crowd, is what it looks like. It's not like the Nazi party, as small as it is, which it is a minority group, but they're not protected. They're not a protected group. They're hated by everybody in the world. So as many as they were, nobody can say that they planned for somebody to die. It looked like a chaos scene that happened to be beneficial
It was one person who went astray.
Media.
Now the thing is, though, that you came out with,
or just led up to their logical conclusions of their beliefs. If that's their belief system,
on the media.
That's the logical conclusion. And let me say real quick, Heather Heyer was a member of DSA. Democratic Socialists of America. She was an activist. Like, she's been at a lot of events. Like, there were a lot of people coming forth with stories about, doing work with her. So, this was a young person who was really interested in the world and kind of, changing it for the better. And it's sad to see that at an event where she was a counter-protester, she was mowed down by a Nazi. Like, it's crazy.
Well, that's the lady, when brother kills brother, that's called civil war. This could be the start of our next civil war. I think that it's that significant, and we've got demonstrations I've put together already. One, I helped put together a vigil that we had Monday, and then I'll be going back Wednesday for another one that I'm putting together. But we're, marching against, and Trump is going to be in Reno Wednesday. So keep an eye on that, because if you remember, Reno was where he had to be taken off stage the more or less last time he was here, or the second to last time he was here last year during the campaign. But we'll be putting together some counter marches. But what was significant, I guess, I don't know, the Boston March, there were about 200 right-wing rally members, and there were 20,000 counter activists. So that was significant.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Shut them down.
The media.
In Boston, the police tried to separate them. They tried to separate both sides before the march by putting up concrete barriers. Just so you know.
So what do you think of Bill de Blasio trying to rid New York of anything offensive now? It's like a sweeping thing. It's like a paranoia. Get your city rid of all these things that irritate people.
Are you talking about marches or what?
No,
de Blasio.
He's putting together sanctuaries and all kinds of stuff in the city that nobody wants. But he has to kind of counter. Who was the other mayor? Not Blumenthal.
Bloomberg.
Who was Bloomberg? Yeah. That's not his name. Who was the other
mayor?
You're
not talking about what's his face who ran for president.
Totally, he was totally right.
The one who hates Hillary.
Yeah, man. Anyway, he's got to counteract what he did as the mayor, because he went over. He was the one who was the architect of what is it when you just stop people on the street, frisks,
stop and frisk,
stop and frisk. So he was the architect of things like that. So New York has gone to the other side. I was just in New York last year, and year before last, I'm sorry, and it seems to be a nicer place than it used to be years ago. So I don't know.
Their crime rate is way down. Crime rate is way down.
I don't know.
Yeah, de Blasio's a dead man walking, though, politically, so he's going to try anything he can, because remember what unions are against him there. The police, I think what do you call that, the travel agency there? I can't even think of the name of that group.
TSA.
The subway. Yeah, so he's got a lot of problems, so I think he's just desperate looking for Hail Marys.
Well, the reason I brought him up was that, do you guys think this is a calculated movement happening nationwide to create the red versus blue fights? Because that's what it looks like to me. It doesn't look like the people actually have the power to get these monuments removed. It's like, what will the local leadership allow to be removed? And they know for a fact it's going to cause a fight.
That's what I'm talking about, the Civil War, Ben. This is the Civil War now. We're in the actual Civil War. Especially when the white man killed his own white brothers and sisters, then that's war. And this is what I've been talking about all this time. You guys have heard me say that white people who are serious about the concern, philosophy of equality have to distance themselves from their past. Have to distance themselves.
Right.
They have to almost denigrate their own ancestors, and that's what they're doing. When you see white people, these aren't black people jumping up on these statues, pushing them over. These are white people. And they're telling the world, the country, we're not going to stand for this inequality, injustice, bias, bigotry, hatred from our fathers and grandfathers on these group of people, because blacks are not the only ones being ostracized right now. This is
I disagree. I disagree with that. I think these people don't understand the value of labor, and it's not that they're punching racism in the face. They're destroying art that was made by an artist who wasn't a racist.
Yeah, let's get into that. Hold up a second. Let's get into that, because we got to remember these civil rights.
You just got into
civil
it, man.
war. These Civil War statues, they came about during Jim Crow, and then they came about during the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement as a reaction to black people trying to move forward. And they were mass-produced. That's why those two fell over so easily when those kids were leaning on it. They were mass-produced really cheaply. Most of them were paid for by the Daughters of the Confederacy. But the question is, in a nation, why would you honor people who committed treason? Like, that's the question. Like, why would you honor these particular people? And I don't think those things just hold up to inspection once you look at them. Like, if you try to say that about Thomas Jefferson or George Washington, then that doesn't hold up, because Thomas Jefferson and George Washington have accomplishments outside of the bad things that they did. You got pros and cons there. Washington walked away from the presidency. He could have sat there and kept power. Stonewall Jackson fought to keep people enslaved. Like, what's to celebrate here? Committed treason on this country. What's to celebrate?
First of all, the Emancipation Declaration didn't come through until 2 years into the war. So people can't say that that's what started the war, or even the most important thing about what the war was. There was a lot of people fighting for their own territory. Proclamation.
No, it was about slavery. Matter of fact, okay, I'll help you, because you're making a bad argument for your side. I'll help you out a little bit. Look up the articles of succession from each state that declared that they were seceding from the United States, and they openly tell you that they were leaving because of slavery. Matter of fact, go to Jefferson Davis, president of the Confederacy, and look up the Cornerstone speech, and he lays out why they were leaving, and also why they were committing war against against America.
Okay, so to counter that argument, it's exactly like the Texas Star. Their symbol of the star means the same thing that the Confederate flag means for the rest of the southern states. The star is not racist. That's to show their solidarity with themselves. They can secede anytime they want. That's written into it.
The hell if they can.
The Texas Constitution is the fattest one out of all of the states. The Texas Constitution has the most into it than any other state, I believe. If you see it, it's like as thick as the Bible.
States do not dictate to nations. Nations dictate to states, and if they succeeded tomorrow, there'd be Marines in Texas shutting it down. Like, I don't know why people have these mythical dreams about we're a sovereign state and we do what we want. No, the hell you don't. Matter of fact, you're dependent on federal money. You're dependent on federal treaties and laws.
You guys are both right. And when North Dakota tried to secede the second time Obama was elected, there were too many federal restrictions for them to be able to do it. But technically, Ben is right. Texas does have some kind of clause in its state.
Nobody cares about your clause when the Marines show up, though. That's the point. Like, after the legal fight will be over, then you'll be dealing with
talking about the symbolism. The star being the symbol that represents Texas and the agreement that they signed into. What I'm also trying to relate about the Civil War, what started me down that track was 100 years is all it took for another coalition to form inside the U.S. So the corruption was noticed within 100 years of the U.S. being born and fought for. They realized that they were being taxed in a way that was too familiar.
Well, here we go again. That's a lie. That's not why they fought. That's not why they fought the Civil War. The Civil War was fought over slavery. The new states and territories, they wanted to expand, and they said, "Look, we got to have some free states and some slave states. Otherwise, you guys get more power and more voting process than we do, and you'll be able to dominate us. So the slave states said, no, we want a few more of those slave states in the new territories. That's what this fight was about. And it was
there
also
was
about
Kansas. There was another. Kansas was made a free. Was Kansas made a free state or a slave state? There was an argument that if we expanded, one had to be a slave and one had to be free.
And that's where
John Brown got
That's where Nevada broke the tie. We here in Nevada broke the tie, and Lincoln decided to go with, because Kansas was going to go free, either the opposite way of Missouri, and Nevada
right
was in,
now.
Yeah, Kansas
Nevada
was going slave
states. There was a bloody fight in Kansas.
Right,
Kansas. But Ben's right. Kansas was trying to go Southern Confederate, and
they were.
But
John Brown didn't like it. The great John Brown.
But you know what? Even after the war, states like Arkansas tried to go back into suppressive ways of legal domination.
Jim Crow with America. We didn't have a Nuremberg trial where people were hung for treason. They were allowed to have their lands back. They were allowed to rule in the South again, and everything became, slavery by another name. So, it didn't change, and that's the biggest injustice afterwards from the Civil War, that we didn't extend what we normally would to people who committed treason. And no, this was not over.
And Spike Lee named his company 40 Mules in an Acre because every freed black was supposed to get 40 acres and a mule.
Well,
Sherman made that promise in South Carolina. No, they didn't. They actually got that land taken from them in South Carolina. But they got it taken from them. But they did get there. A lot of black slaves got 40 acres and a mule. It's just that they couldn't keep up with the cost of the lease, the property, and they lost it in taxes and all kinds of other scams.
Right, they were squeezed out in a different way.
Right, and that's when you get the Great Migration coming to the north. But just look up Warmth of Other Suns. That's a book that really details that kind of moment in history. But no matter what, when you start having these arguments with people about the Confederacy, like there is nothing to preserve about the Confederacy that you could really stand on as an American. These people decided to commit war against the country of their birth based on economic reason, based on wanting to keep slavery. Remember, the South furnished the raw materials, the North furnished the finished goods, and then they shipped them to Europe and made money. Now,
it's not about revering what they did. It's not about loving them for every mistake that they made. It's also about looking at
Have you made a statue to Benedict Arnold yet? Then where's the Benedict Arnold statue? Because I want to see that.
What I'm asking.
He's got one in Boston. He has one in Boston.
Damn it! No.
You guys let Ben finish his thought before you start making smack arguments.
New York, the name, the state. It was named after what? The Duke of York? Did he have any slaves?
It used to be New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking is, how far does this go? If we remove every offensive thing out of our history books and out of our landmarks, we don't have any scars.
We don't have. Here we go. Here we go. The great hustle argument. When we start saying if we remove history, statues aren't history. History is in books, museums, all the data we keep and all the information we keep. Nobody walks up to a statue and says, I'm going to learn history. Let me walk over to the statue. No, statues are to honor people in your country because they did something significant. That's why you have statues. Right. Now, if you have somebody...
Right, so why would you dig into their personal life?
Why would you give them a place of honor?
Well, in the city of New Orleans, the city council decided to remove the statues. So some cities decided on their own before this got all boiled up.
There's really no argument to keep them. That's the tough part, because you're talking about treason. Like I said, go to Germany and see if you find Nazi regalia. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
The regime changed. Go to Germany in the 30s and see if there's nothing, or if there's an anti-Nazi thing in Germany in the 30s. They changed everything over to Nazi during the time they were in power. Everything that wasn't Nazi was gone. So what's left of it? I don't agree with anybody waving a Nazi flag because a lot of Americans died fighting to bring that flag down, and I appreciate that. And
so why wouldn't you say
my grandpa fought in Korea?
So half of the country.
More Americans died in the Civil War than any other war.
Yeah,
600,000.
They were killing
Guys.
those.
If we remove it.
They removed the Confederate flag. Confederate flag and the Nazi flag had the same general symbolism. And it's
way different. Way different, I think.
It's a flag.
Yeah, what's different?
It's a flag, Ben. It's a flag.
You want to hear something depressing? The sale of Confederate flags tripled after Dylan Roof killed 9 people in the church in South Carolina.
That's because in 2060 it's going to be worth double than what they bought it. That's why they're buying it. It's not necessarily because they want it as a symbol.
They interviewed a lady who makes the flags, and
still interesting.
You can find anything out on NPR.
But what have you learned from how people are acting, though? Look at our nation right now. People are bringing sticks and shields and bottles of piss. They're like children. They're fighting like kids do. It's not like people are arming up and going to fight a war. They're going to beat each other, and they know it's just play fighting basically because they get all freaked out when someone gets seriously hurt. But what the hell do they expect?
That's why we at the NAACP
Good point.
We are professionals at civil disobedience, and we know that bringing those sticks is wrong. And we don't advocate violence. We will go down. We're rather, one of our mottos, we'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. And when I saw Martin Luther King, I've already told you that when I saw Martin Luther King, the main message was don't ever give up what we've got. Don't go back.
Ben made a significant point, though. Let's just say all 4 of us were out there in Charlottesville. How would you guys have asserted yourself on that day?
You have to laugh at all the weasels and all the pigs that are out there. That's what McConnell and Bannon and all those guys are calling them. They're calling them pieces of white trash, and they are.
I think I would have tried. I would have walked up to an advocate for the Nazis in that group and tried to maybe have a discussion with them. Even if I was wasting my time, I still could have planted a seed.
They maybe muddy the waters more than anything because they feel like they should confront Nazis everywhere, so they always fight with them. And
but they fight free speech.
I don't think that ends up looking good.
That doesn't make any sense at all. They're using.
Does free speech include a group who says we don't think you should exist? Like, at what point is that a conversation?
Okay, well, I'm not standing up for the
Christians call people like that? They call them lost.
Oh, I call them stupid. I call them stupid.
No, they're wrapped up in their own self-importance and hatred.
They're not people. These aren't human beings we're dealing with, and that's because they don't have hearts. There's nothing that they love. They haven't loved anything in their lives. So these people are just prone to violence.
Which people?
The ones who are
Nazis.
Like
the white people,
they think that the white people should dominate.
Right.
I thought you were talking about Antifa too.
No, we're mainly talking about just the good old boy white crackers who turn up just because they have an identity crisis. Like, they don't really know what the hell they don't know what they want.
Right.
They didn't go to computer school to get a better job. Who are they bitching at?
That's why we don't respect you. That's why we don't respect the white man who's got those kind of ideas in their head. We wear our pants down, dirty dreads, fonts, and our finger in the air, and we don't give a fuck. And so that's one of the things I've been. Why are you laughing, Jane? You don't understand. You don't understand this shit now. Black people don't.
But do you think that's helping? You've seen the progress of that ever since 1985.
I'm laughing, Don, because you have to make a distinction.
Oh, stupid! You can't help stupid, Ben. These people have this mindset.
Yes, you can.
You can't help stupid. The Bible
says every soul is salvageable.
No, but they don't have a soul because they don't have a mind. Their minds are wrong.
It's a good idea to try to convince Nazis. Like I don't know if you can convince somebody whose ideology is that you can have a discussion about your humanity. They believe you should be removed from the earth. Like, where does the conversation go with them? So I mean, Antifa is a problem because they may actually get sympathy for these people when Antifa shows up to fight them. So I mean, that does become a problem. So I definitely understand when people bring them up. But, I mean, they're committed, and if there were no Nazis, there would be no Antifa. So, I mean...
Well, that's why Donald Trump mimicked that person, the journalist, because he knows that he can get away with talking about stupid people. He knows he can get away with talking about retards. He knows that. And so he does it, and he's now the president of the United States.
Well, I think
in a weird time.
I think racism and this fight that Antifa has on both sides. I'll say extreme racism is terrible. Any kind of racism is not acceptable. I have people from just about every continent in my family, and so I think racism can be cured on an individual level. When you find out there's somebody in your family who speaks like... Well, no, let me explain, because I just went and visited some family. My brother's new wife doesn't speak any English at all, but she's the sweetest person I've ever met. But the only way we could communicate... Okay, thanks. The only way we could communicate was with Google Translate. So anything that she wanted to say that she didn't have the words for, we got to read it, and we could look each other in the eye and communicate. And I think that can be fixed with a lot of people if they would just let go of their group, because tribalism is killing the message. People latch onto their group so hard that they won't listen to someone else.
Brian,
and that's what I'm talking about, stupid. That's what I'm talking about, you can't...
Ben, where is your wife from?
My sister-in-law, she's from Juarez.
From where?
Juarez.
From where?
Juarez,
Mexico.
Juarez,
That's right across the Texas border.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
John, were you the one who was laughing?
No.
Or was it Nash?
Because
that was me.
We're both listening to this.
Don't be assholes, you guys, because you know what? I'm just a white cracker trying to fit in.
But you're
asking
nobody laughing
at you.
Questions.
I was laughing at him saying you can fix these things on an individual basis with conversations. No, you actually can't. Talking about systemic problems. Talking about millions of people with this issue who benefit from having this issue.
Thank you.
And they're not going to give up their gains in the idea of some kind of brotherhood of man. They've shown that generation after generation. So you can call me cynical, but no, I just think that's, kind of, it's childish.
You know what? One thing I noticed.
Thank you.
Doesn't any of these white racists care if their boss sees them on TV with a Klan flag? Like, don't they care?
Their boss told them it's okay to have the day off. Jane, shut up.
It was a Saturday, you bonehead.
That's all right. They work on Saturdays. I know people who work on Saturdays.
No, there have been a few of them who have been out and lost their jobs because, look, normal racism is acceptable. The things that are already structured in society, that's acceptable. But, like, Nazism and things like that, like, everybody's against that. So if you're out there parading with Nazis, you could lose your job.
Well,
don't you think that
if I was a white employer, or even if I was another color, and I saw anybody out there with a Nazi flag, I would be wary of having that person on my team.
You sound like a racist, Jane, because you're putting out these ideas, these postulates that are false or that are speculative, expecting us to respond to them. That's why this is somewhat contentious.
All I'm saying is that when I watched the headline news and I saw the videos, I would be embarrassed to be out there with a Nazi flag or a pro-Confederate hat or whatever you want to say. It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. I just came back from Europe. It's embarrassing to be an American anywhere in the world. So why would you be embarrassed about carrying a tiki sign and looking like Hitler, a pseudo Hitler. You know, I mean, these guys don't have any morals. They have no empathy, or they have no heart. That's what I've been saying. You guys don't understand. They have no heart. They don't care about anything. Ben. If you are saying that the biggest workers, the best workers in America for the last century was the black man, and you are saying that you're discounting his entire history, then you're wrong. Whoever is
That's
saying
not
that
what
is wrong.
I never said that. I didn't say
No,
anything like that.
Don, sometimes you get Don, sometimes you get in the professorial mode and you start belittling Albert, John, and Ben just because they're not black.
I'm not. I don't mean to put this as a personal affront to Ben or Albert or John. I'm talking about the oppressors, the leaders who have let us down apparently, and they probably haven't let us down, but they're just fake newsing it. But the bottom line is that we don't need to be made great again, because we are already so great that we're overachieving, and we're losing our youth. We're giving computers that can access almost any place in the planet to idiots. And I'm going to call them, these guys who just don't even hardly know how to read, and they're ready to send off some nuclear warhead. And that's what we've got going on right now.
That's the trouble with Nazi ideology and all this, this nationalist ideology. At a certain point, you're talking about uneducated people who picked a side and decided to read information that reinforces what they already think. The greatest writer America ever produced, Mark Twain, he said, what you find out with people who take pride in their race or some other thing that they're not responsible for is a sad person, because overall, whenever they brag about their particular group, what you find out is they can never brag about themselves. And that's the reality. So they want to go back and say, hey, we did this, we did that, we did. Man, there's no group on the planet who can sit up and say they did more than any other group. This planet is really, really old. Everybody has contributed for human civilization, and the idea that anybody has the birthright or more accomplishments than anybody else is laughable, man.
Nash, we were talking about Mark Twain in Huckleberry Finn. He wrote about mob rule and people asserting themselves through, he was talking about lynching in the South, basically. How different groups just become lawbreakers. And we also talked about the Federalist 10. James Madison said that, how are you going to control the minority faction when they go off on a hinge? And also, how are you going to protect the minority faction?
You got to remember one thing, Jane, that that America would be in a much better place if they had employed those many blacks who are unemployed for their tax benefits and everything else, tax paying. We would be much better off. Economists will tell you that if we had that full or more full employment in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we would be much better off as a country financially.
Well, Nash talked about that in the beginning, that when you ignore a segment of society and don't cultivate their gifts and talents, then you're creating a brewing ground for a frustrated population that will turn to crime and violence because they have no other choice.
But are you still going to call it national? Are you going to call Nash a liar then too? Because you've been calling. I've been saying this forever, and you tell me to shush up.
I've never told you to shut up, but you've told me to shut up 2 times tonight.
3 times.
Yeah, but right. But
and we're on the same damn side.
Right. Well,
and by the way,
but what you see is
I'll be in Reno in a week, so I'll kick your ass in person.
All right, come on with it. Come on with it.
But just look at this opioid thing kick up all over these rural areas. Next, you're gonna see the violence because people are gonna fight over the trade, and then they're going to start locking up young white kids in the prison industrial complex the same way they did the blacks in the 90s. Well,
we've had a lot of Native Americans and whites die of heroin. I live up by the north shore of Lake Superior.
I've heard people tell me that they won't lock them up, but I promise you they will. You know why? Because whiteness is given and whiteness can be taken away. They'll start calling them poor white trash again like they used to.
The people who are on drugs up here do get locked up, Don, and they get...
I wanted to respond to something.
The bottom line is that the only reason people are talking about the opioids...
Sure, Ben, hold on a minute.
They've gotten to the white community, but also...
1 second.
It's their dads who are doctors prescribing all these opioids to their own kids.
I don't agree with that, and I can tell you why in a minute. Don, you're on mute. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, okay. So time and time again, if I've taken a different stance than somebody else, I've been associated with white patriarchy or white privilege or any of the above, and I haven't really had a privileged life. It's been a tough life. I've worked for everything I've got. Didn't get a handout. Didn't go to college. But this narrative, and I think the difference, what I was trying to say with mob mentality and tribalism stopping the message from going forward, is that people won't cross the aisle. Once they've joined a side, they believe they're on the right side, they won't cross over. What I was saying with racism, I think that's easier cured on an individual level. What I was saying was it takes somebody to cross over. Maybe
Don,
it's a family member, a new family member can do that. I would like to respond first to Ben.
First of all, I used to be an activist. Now I'm in my mid-50s, and I get my stuff out through editorials. But for someone to cross the line all the way and penetrate the society in the way the Charlottesville protesters did, you do have to be a radical. But I understand the tribalism because Samuel Huntington, a political scientist, predicted it way back in 1990, that the last stages of American civilization are going to be met with ethnic and social clashes of dichotomous viewpoints.
That's the only one.
I guess I don't think I answered your question.
That's the only smart.
Go ahead, Donner, Nash.
That's the only smart.
Nash, you've called our show before, by the way. I recognize your voice.
Oh, cool. No,
okay, Donner, Nash, you can go, but you can't laugh, Don.
Yeah, I want Ben to address that. I don't even want to address it because I think it's just like, dude, you're talking about institutional problems. You're talking about grand scale, millions of people. And to say that, one at a time we can get somebody to change their heart, that's all well and good. But, okay, median wealth for black people is $5,000. Median wealth for white people is $80,000. When you talk about that disparity, and then you move to the justice system, then you move to employment, then you move to college, and you move to access to resources in cities, and you just look at all of this structure and you realize that America is essentially built like an apartheid
You can't use
system.
The Census Bureau.
You can't
use
this
the
by
Census
just
Bureau
walking around talking to folks. Like it's not enough.
It's lazy, though. These Census Bureau statistics are lazy statistics. You can't group every single light-skinned person together as a Caucasian. You can't do that with any other color of skin either. People come from all over the world, and they might have the same skin color as somebody from a remote island. You have no way to
like right now,
do that with the
census.
census.
I could cite all the stats I need. I could cite as many books as I need to your argument of, well, each one teach one. I just walk around and remove racists from their racism, and that'll fix it. And you don't want to put in the labor to understand this issue. I don't want to put in the labor to explain it to you because you're not going to listen anyway. So I mean, it is what it is.
Oh, I'm listening, but I do get irritated by census statistics when I disagree with the way they collect their numbers in the first place.
Median income has nothing to do with the damn census. That has nothing to do with the census, man. Why would?
Then what groups are you comparing?
You know what, Nash, you mentioned education earlier. Education is where it all starts. They bastardize statistics, the departments of education everywhere bastardize statistics all day long. Every single statistic can be modified to whatever department needs that information. I know for a fact that Common Core, and I'm a big non-Common Core, I crossed the aisle. I don't know if Ben was talking about that earlier or not, crossing the line. But anyway, me being a lobbyist, I do a lot of things for the Republicans, for the Red Party, in education. And I'm a member of Protect Nevada's Children, and that is a group that is trying to stop data collection, the testing and the compilation of test scores and all the ancillary information that's being collected by children during their school year can right now be sold to third, fourth, fifth, sixth, eighth parties for anything. And that's perfect road for corporate or prison, from the schools to prison. And people don't understand it. But if you know eugenics, the control of the masses, you're talking about mass control, eugenics is the perfect, or is the ultimate study of the people's brain and their mass consciousness and tendencies. And that's what the school system does. That's what they call it, social emotional learning. And that's pervasive in every school across the country, contractual text. And,
well, it acts as public relations, because you explain everything away by saying, well, if you look at their test scores over here, that would explain why X, Y, and Z is happening. And the reality is, if every marginalized group in this country educated every one of their children and they came out of school and were ready to work, would there be jobs for them? And the answer is no. When you look at the top scoring students in the nation, most valedictorians, where are they coming from? Typically, they're immigrants, first generation. Are these people the majority of CEOs? No, because when you go to those places, you're still dealing with the infrastructure of racism, and it's not a person-to-person thing that's going to fix it. We actually have to have white people who decide, look, this isn't right. We're going to change this. We're going to be more merit-based. We're going to get rid of the idea of racism as a structure. But the problem is too many people benefit from it, so why would they tear it down?
Right. Well, there's things that contribute to that, too.
Same thing with doctors. That they're prescribing all these, killing their own sons and daughters that you were supposed to respond to, Ben. But they're doing it because you've got that moneymaker on both sides. If you're going to be healthy, you've got money going there, eating natural foods, exercise, yada, yada, going to the gym. And if you're going to be sick, or if you're going, you go to the doctor and he's going to make you sicker, so that everybody's winning. Win-win. The funeral homes win. The EMTs win. You know, everybody has a job when they're sick, when everybody's sick.
So I don't understand how we've gotten to the point where we criticize ourselves so bad that if you look at the world stage,
because we're hypocritical.
If an American goes to any other country, say if a American goes to Japan, what are you going to see? How's he going to be out of place? If he tries to get a job and move up in the ranks, are they going to give it to him?
They won't let him. They won't let him.
So
he's gonna have
so that's a country.
Well, it depends. It depends. Japan
has
something called the Deming Award. The Deming Award, which is based on an American engineer. Like, that's how much they revere American ingenuity. They've taken on a lot of American ideas over there. But remember this. Japan is number one in education in the world. China's in the top 10. America's in the far back 20s. So the idea that we would send somebody over from our raggedy educational system into theirs, actually, we need to be learning a lot more from them.
There's a big difference in how they collect their statistics. Also, Japan has a homogeneity. Well, how do you say that? Homogeneity.
Homogenous? How much is that?
Homogenous population, yeah. It's mostly, you'll find mostly Japanese people in Japan. So that makes it real easy for the statistics. But in the United States, we have...
I'm not sure in the military or the car factory. If you're in the military,
the U.S.
or
investment in Japan means more than anything.
Japan.
But beyond that, the biggest issue with Japan is they don't have a huge amount of natural resources that anybody else would want to dominate. So they've been able to kind of live peacefully after World War II. They were kind of, allowed to be a U.S. junior partner to have a foot over there in Southeast Asia. So that means way more than the idea of having a homogenous society. That doesn't mean anything. There's a lot of homogenous societies
no, that was just for statistics value.
Soil, and they've been getting their ass kicked for a while.
What I'm saying is you could probably trust their statistics values better than you could trust ours, because the way that we've been removing things that are offensive and different ways of gathering statistics because it's offensive or one-sided or not fair, we've kind of leveled our statistics where they don't mean
on who you're getting
specifically.
The numbers from. If you're getting the numbers from honest people, you get honest numbers. If you're getting the number from an organization who wants to prove something or has an agenda, then you're going to get their numbers that are skewed. But when you start talking about like white, black, Asian, or whatever as far as educational opportunities, all you got to do is start breaking into those different interlocers, and then you'll see those numbers bear out. So a black kid from a middle-class family, they typically do well than poor white kids. White kid from a well-to-do family does way better than poor black kids. Asian family depends on which Asian you're talking about. Chinese, Japanese, somebody from the Philippines or Vietnam, way different educational outcomes based on what? Socioeconomic background. So those are more telling statistics than race are. Race really doesn't tell you much. You need to know a lot more about what group you're talking about.
The entire country of Singapore is number one in math, science, and
Singapore is number one.
Right?
Japan is number one. Singapore is not number
Singapore.
one. Matter of fact, Singapore is the one place where you can't actually eat what you want to eat because their society is so locked down that they decided what are health risks and what are not. And if you want to believe numbers coming out of Singapore, you should also believe what Putin tells you. So, I mean, if we're doing that. But, yeah, look at their health risks. It's amazing.
When I looked it up just recently, Singapore was at the top of the list and number one in education, and math and reading especially. Or math and science, I'm sorry. But math and science, they were number one in the world, and the United States was 38th. That's why I bought my kids Singapore math books to try to get them ahead, because they actually use the Common Core system, but the way that they word the math and teach the math must be a better way. So at the time when I looked it up, Singapore was above Japan.
Explore Singapore a little more before you make this leap. And I'll give you another detail. The UK is now actually buying the Chinese method of math. So they're buying textbooks from China, they're bringing in instructors from China, and they're actually adapting their whole system to what the Chinese do. And, the English whole form of composition and rigorous study and everything else has been duplicated all over the world. Like, they're known as some of the best as far as, that goes. Now, if they're making that leap, that lets you know where things are going. But Singapore, I wouldn't suggest it. I'd say check out Japan and China, man, and India as well. You'll see some other things.
Well, I'll keep looking, but I bought them anyway, and they seem to be really educational. It seems like the math is explained a little better in those books, even though they're translated to English. So,
right.
But
yeah, Singapore, man, look up their healthcare, man. That shit is crazy. Like, they will not allow you to do certain things that they consider dangerous to your health. So they've really cracked down on salty things, fried things, sugary things. Like, it's a lockdown society. It's weird.
Well, what I wanted to get back to when we were talking about the difference between I won't even go into the Nazis. Who cares about them? We've heard enough about Nazis. But the Antifa group, what they seem to be trying to destroy is patriarchy. They say they're anti-fascist, but then they're actually against free speech, and they use violence to stop people from speaking. And what's kind of a phenomenon about that to me is that the the black community and the Antifa seem to have some of the same. It's like there's an unspoken alliance going on. But the problem with that is that they're attacking patriarchy of any kind. And there's a lot of patriarchy in any family, so it's basically like they're attacking the family. And that aggression gets diverted to white patriarchy because it has to be. You can't attack your own family, basically, so they're attacking the foreign patriarchy.
So Antifa is against fascist groups. Antifa's main concern is not patriarchy. They're against fascist groups. They've been doing this since way back in the day. You can find Antifa groups all over the world fighting against Nazis. So that's their fight. How you tied that into the black community, I have no idea. But, hey,
nope.
Do what you like.
It's okay. It's a radical leftist. There's a lot of Marxist views.
Ben.
What
black people do you know that are radical leftists?
Ben, I'm trying to tell you, blacks are not radical. Blacks have not been radical. Blacks are loving.
I wish we were.
Fun, celebrating prayer. They respect the human race. That's why we pray. That's why we, besides saving our lives.
I'm not saying black people in general. I never said black people in general. But the Black Lives Matter.
Black people don't believe in violence in general.
So now we do the whataboutism and we compare Nazis to Black Lives Matter.
Ben.
Well,
we don't.
No, I'm not comparing
other terms of violence. There are other terms than violence. Violence is not the only answer. It's a worse answer.
But what I'm saying is that free speech is the alternative to violence, and that's what's being attacked at all the universities.
At all the universities, free speech is being attacked. Or we could say, people on the right wing at certain colleges decide to book controversial people because they know there'll be a ruckus. So let's bring Ann Coulter to Berkeley. Well, I wonder what will happen. Yes, people will be upset.
She should have been.
So let's flip that dynamic. Let's send a raving socialist to the Chicago School of Economics. Do you think that'll go well on campus?
Why not?
Well, I don't know. What I'm saying is people like
Jordan
Peterson.
That's what campus. When I went to Marquette, we had the most controversial stuff in the world.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is people like Jordan.
They closed the Brooks Memorial Union. They would not let anti-war demonstrators conduct protests there, but later on Marquette became notorious. It was a huge movement to get the ROTC the hell off the Marquette campus.
And they failed.
They did, and there also
I was
talking to Don about this 2 days ago. All the blacks on the basketball team walked off the team in '68 because of the disparity in black students on the Catholic campus. But then their coach talked. They told them coach told them their careers would be ruined if they quit basketball, so they went back.
Right, because he was for it. The story is, Jane, that he was actually behind the kids leaving because Mal McGuire was one of the cutting edge, and he knew that these kids were poor, and he knew that they if they had their protest, then they needed to protest. Go ahead and protest. But your career, if you sat out, and these people, these pros, see this, these scouts, they won't, hire you. They won't let you.
Yeah, they didn't go back for a week, but the black students that were enrolled that year left and never came back. And as a result, Marquette recruited more blacks the following year. So.
And I was in the class 2 years later.
Yep. Didn't you graduate from Marquette in 73 or 74?
77 when we won the national championship, and I was playing a lot of pickup games against the team, and we were kicking their butts all the time because they couldn't play hard for injury's sake. You
were playing the team and you won?
I always did. No, we practiced against the national championship team. Yeah. It was cool, but it was nothing for us because we were whooping their ass all the time. This was before the time they won. They had the worst record of any national championship basketball team in history. So, they had a lot of work
in
to do.
In 77?
In 77, right.
Well, you guys, we've been going almost 2 hours. Can we wind this down now? I'd like to go to bed tonight before I save the world.
You ain't lying. It's late.
One Nazi at a time.
You're on the East Coast.
Right. One Nazi at a time.
I'm going to save the world one Nazi at a time.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll take you. That'll take you how long?
I don't know, but I thought of an idea. Remember that Buddhist monk who lit himself on fire during the Vietnam War? If someone did something like that to protest, I'm sure somebody would get converted.
No, if it was a
they
white
just
guy,
share it on
everybody laughed.
Instagram and Facebook and say, wow.
But
Jesus.
Ben, I was just wondering, did you go down and take the John seminar of activist philosophy?
John never came back, by the way. He's too scared of us.
You sounded a lot like John with some of the stuff you were talking about tonight.
Well, I'm just getting warmed up.
There you go.
Ben makes a lot more sense than John. I hate to tell you, Don. John talks about the same mantra all the time.
All right.
These are the arguments you see on Facebook and YouTube comment sections. So I'm, not surprised by the questions.
Except I try to never swear. I try not to swear, just in case.
Well, you notice
Ben's a radical in his own right. He supported Lavoy Finicum and the Bundy brothers.
And that's way weird.
Wow.
I mean,
okay.
But no, because the Bundys had a bill to pay and they didn't pay it. That's our problem here in Nevada.
That's true.
That's the problem.
That's right. They don't deserve a Fourth Amendment anymore, right? They haven't seen the light of day for over 2 years.
I know they haven't, but it wasn't the Fourth Amendment. It was the commerce. It's the Commerce Clause. It's where you if there's a bill that you accrue, you pay it.
Okay. Yeah,
why are all these patriots against paying taxes? I always wondered about that. All these people who are all patriotic.
Because the Patriots, Nash, the United States was
Let's
built
not get into the Bundy brothers tonight, but Nash, do you know the Bundy story?
Jane, shut up. But the bottom line is, Nash.
I'm going to kick your white ass when I get to Reno.
Oh, come on, baby. But Nash, you got to understand that this whole country was based on the non-payment of taxes. This is what the whole revolution was about. So if you're a real patriot, you don't pay any taxes. That's why we have all of these clauses in the IRS, which shouldn't even be in existence. The IRS is only.
That's not the whole story, and you know it. It's okay to skim over it like that. It's okay to skim over it.
Non-taxpayer.
It was only a temporary tax, Ben. It wasn't supposed to be forever.
It doesn't have anything to do with national monuments.
Don, you know how they say hoes over bros? This was cows over taxes.
Something like that.
Okay. Well, if it's that interesting to you, you should check out that Harry Reid was their neighbor, and figure out what deals Harry Reid had with their land, and learn about that.
I'm here with Harry. I'm here with Harry. I've talked to Harry several times. I talked to Dean Heller. He told me more or less was not going to vote for this health care, and he did. I just talked to Catherine Cortez Mastos yesterday, and
don't double cross him. Yeah. You'll be in jail with the Bundys if you go against Harry Reid.
Believe me, Harry Reid. I'm one of his
advocates.
Okay.
All I'll say is pay your taxes, man. Pay your taxes.
Yeah,
John's a card-carrying Democrat, Ben. He worked for Senator Mastos. He helped her get elected.
Yeah, I did get her. I did.
He went door to door. He went door to door for her.
And now she's
well,
the first
next time
Latina.
you go door to door, cure racism while you're at it. Remember, he said, "Go door to door."
We stopped the voucher. We did. We stopped the voucher system. But that's what I'm talking about. Eugenics and that education thing, Nash. You got to look into it because because education is totally different than what people think. It's not about what the kids think. It's not about teaching kids. It's about controlling them and their families so that they can be pigeonholed into one form of employment or jail or nothing. That's the whole purpose of education, not the education of the kid, period.
Right, and fiction tells you the truth by lying to you. And you can see that every day.
My twin sister makes her half-black son study 4 hours a night.
Jane, that's very good. That's what you're supposed to. No, that's what you're supposed to do. But the bottom line is that collection of data is to pigeonhole these kids, and it's in the mission statement. If you go back to 2003, look at the mission statement for Common Core. It guarantees that 2/3 of our students will fail, and that's exactly what we've seen happen. These kids are failing left and right. They're just not telling you, and the main thing is that the data is that they're supposed to collect in order to be able to help these kids, to tutor them or whatever needs to be done for those in need. That data is being collected and shared. It's being put out there for purposes other than other data collection or data agencies so that they can implement the proper curriculum. That's what it's supposed to be, or they
to justify the way the country is right now. It's nothing new. Nothing new. Just a new form. And in 2 years, they'll have another program. Oh, this is the race to the top of the scale of whatever. Because I've been through all of it, man. I used to work in the education system. Race to the top, No Child Left Behind, all these other nonsense programs they come up with every few years. Same old shit. But, man, y'all have a good night. I'm going to go and lay it down. It's late as hell, man.
Yeah, it's time to wrap up, guys. Thanks for calling, Nash. Thanks for calling.
Nice to meet you, Nash.
Yeah, good talking to you,
man. It's Nash.
Let him have a conclusion, damn it.
I will. He's the one who said he had to go.
I don't care what he said. Let him have a conclusion.
Okay, Nash, do you have something to say? Here, let me see if he hung. I can't get back to the screen right now. I think he's just tired and he hung up. Yeah, he hung up.
Later, Nash.
So I have a conclusion, Don.
Uh-oh.
Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Jane.
Basically, I did enjoy a lot of the things people said tonight. Inherently, I think that, no, you can't save one racist at a time, but the Bible speaks of men's hearts and how there's darkness in men's hearts, and if they're exposed to the light, that they can be converted. I'm not saying you have to do it Christian style, but Jesus is the light of the world, and I'm starting to sound like John, but basically, our country needs a remedy for its problems. I think part of the problem lies in the definitions, that people are too obsessed about their own definition of rightness, when you just have to remember to treat others like regular human beings and look past their color and their education and their creed. And that's what I do. I've met a lot of wonderful people, the people I didn't think I'd end up being friends with that were way different than me. And I'm glad that we all got to be a part of this tonight because it was a really active discussion. And going back to the Kansas-Missouri thing, people died and they were willing to die just because they didn't want their state to become a free state versus slave state. And attitudes can change and people can change. Okay, one of you guys can go next.
I'll go next because I'll be really interested in hearing what Ben has to say. For the most part, and that was the first time I laughed on the show too, James, so shut up. But anyway, my main thing is that...
I didn't mute you this time.
It's this time. That was 5, by the way. All this wish we could come together kumbaya crap, that's going to be like 600 or 700 years down the road. We've got a lot of work ahead of us to get through the next 6 months. With the budget, balanced budget coming down the pike the next month, we've got another huge fight on our hands. We're going to have tax reform, all this nonsense. And I just, had a big talk with one of our pastors, and she was saying that it's all nonsense. This is all crap that is just meant to sheathe, again, cloak the things that are actually being done, which is, there's some subsidies that Trump has been able to give to some of the corporations under the table in the last couple of days. There are other things that are being given away by the Trump administration, and they'd be given away faster if he could get these people together instead of not being able to take care of his own house. Otherwise, we'd be a Nazi state in the next 6 months. And so it's fortunate that he has no control over his own mouth and his own brain in order to get these people together and work for him. I mean, when you lose Steve Bannon is the architect of everything Trump did. And,
right.
And so when you lose a Bannon, then you are really in trouble taking care of your own business. Trump can't.
I agree with that because he needed Bannon for that expertise. He can't go it alone without flubbing up.
Right, and the funny thing about it is that Donald Trump is so stupid himself that he doesn't know when he's falling off one side or the other off the balance beam. He has no clue that he's going too far right or too far left. That's where Steve Bannon came in. He had even though he's a racist pig, he still has a little bit of rationality to him, a little bit of logic in some certain issues, and that's what kept Donald Trump as a rhino, because Donald Trump is actually a rhino. He's a Republican in name only, but he's still got some Democratic principles. The thing that makes him so controversial and so complex is that he has extremely racist ideology, and that comes from his family. His great granduncle being the supplier for the adoptees, and then also he beats the Mein Kampf on that bedroom table, like his son, mentioned. So he's a very complex man, and he's lost control of all of the things that he's about. So right now, Steve Bannon was the only person who kept him in line. Now, I don't even know what he's going to do. He's going to sit down in the middle of the east wing and pout in the middle of the floor, and everybody's walking around looking at him. That's the only thing I can see where he's at. He doesn't have Kelly. He doesn't have Miller. He's losing Sessions. He's already lost Priebus. He's getting ready to, he doesn't know what to do. Scaramucci and the first.
He lost Scaramucci before he even got to first base. I think we should wrap this up now and let Ben go. I did watch a special on Bannon this past week, but I'll get into that next show. Go ahead, Ben. Thank you, Don.
All right.
You got it.
Yeah. I think Trump's going to do a lot more talking to Pence than he did before. I think we'll hear more about him, or maybe we won't hear anything. But I think he's going to be doing a lot more talking with Pence than he was. As far as my comment that was laughed at, I didn't mean to go knocking on doors and try to talk people out of racism. What I meant was it can be fixed on an individual basis, and it's a choice of the person to fix it, because all you have to do is really look at your immediate family and neighbors who you like. Step away from the movement that people think you're a part of, or that you might even think you're a part of, just by knowing somebody. I mean, I know a lot of people. One of my best friends was in charge of the multicultural committee in the Navy. So any barbecue that he had, I got to meet people from all over the world. And there was never any problem there. I learned something every time. And we're all people, and there's really no room for hating somebody else's race, because that's ridiculous. You just don't know enough about it if you hate it. And as far as
I think like when you move, like I moved to LA, and that's how I met like Filipinos, Armenians, Koreans. Like people don't really know how easy it is just to get along with other people when they just come into your life one person at a time.
And especially if you allow yourself to be a minority. If you're not afraid to be outnumbered by people who are different than you, you'll learn a lot more. But if you go in there with a coalition, it's easier, since you're a bigger target. Everybody clumps together like they're doing a lot of right now. You become a bigger target. You become a tougher target, because there's so much camaraderie going on, so you can handle more. But you're also a bigger target. So to join any group that hates everybody else or hates another group, I think the group is basically the problem. That people need to step away and be unafraid to test the waters on your own. Go out and meet people.
I mean, you'd have to be pretty ignorant to even get to that level. I mean, I guess I would say provincial, like living in a fishbowl.
And as far as the Confederate flag waving people, I would never pay for a Confederate flag. But for the people that drive around with the Confederate flags on their trucks and stuff like that, for anybody to think that Trump is somehow connected in a Confederate kind of way, that's ridiculous. If anything, he'd be a Yank. If you're still thinking in Civil War mentality, Trump would be a New York Yank. He's a businessman.
And he's identified himself as a New Yorker most of his life.
Right.
Which
it's
is
not like
in
he
many
has
ways
a free pass.
In many ways upscale, right?
Right. I mean,
and a New York Yank is still a northern bigot.
That's not true, Don. There's been a lot of welcoming communities in the North.
Oh God, they're patriots.
Well, in other countries like Australia, New Zealand, Britain, a lot of those places, they call all Americans Yanks, and it catches on. You call them all Yanks because actually the Yanks won the war, and basically what caught a hold. That's a nickname for all Americans. Now, doesn't mean we're all, politically aligned. We get to be called Yanks because
one thing about the Yanks at one time right near the end of the Civil War, they were squealers for abolitionists, against abolitionists. Anybody that they caught or they saw were carrying black slaves into the North, they would actually go tell.
Yes. You guys, my computer is kind of like crashing, so can we wrap this up, dudes?
All right. Well,
that was my conclusion.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
That was it.
Well, he made it, and I like your last few points you made about, people's perspective, because it's not like we could change the whole country around, but anyone who listens to this episode might be partially convinced. So with that, I'm not going to do a song tonight. Next week, I'm flying out Monday night to Medford, Oregon. I'll be in town still Sunday night. So I'll see you guys next week, okay?
And you'll see me next week.
I'll see Don in the flesh next week. And then if you have the gas money, you could fly. You could drive to Medford. I'll be in Grants Pass, Oregon for 3 days. But I doubt you have the money.
I think I've done enough. I think we've done about 10,000 miles
right?
this year.
Yeah, you went to California.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll come and see you someday.
All right, baby.
All right.
Okay, bye,
Have
y'all.
a good one, you guys.
All right,
Good
God
night.
bless you.